The hall of the alien king was silent except for the sound of drums. Firelight flickered against the tall stone pillars, and guards with glowing spears stood like statues on each side. At the far end of the hall, on a throne of black crystal, sat the king. His golden crown reflected the fire, and his cold eyes stared at the man who had been brought before him. Human. The human's boots dragged across the cracked floor. His clothes were torn, his face bruised, but his eyes were sharp, unbroken. Whispers ran through the court. Aliens from every corner of the empire had gathered here. They whispered one word again and again: Deathworlder. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy, feared for their strange strength and stubbornness. The king raised his hand, and silence fell. His voice was deep, echoing through the chamber. "You fought bravely in the pit," the king said. "You defeated my champions one after another. You earned your reward." The king clapped his hands, and the floor shook as servants rolled in carts heavy with treasure. Ouch. Gold coins spilled like rivers. Chests of glowing crystals lit up the hall. Weapons carved from ancient stars gleamed in the firelight. The crowd gasped at the sight. It was enough wealth to buy a planet. The king leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Human, all this is yours. Take the gold. Take the jewels. Take whatever your heart desires. I've earned it." The human did not move. His gaze did not rest on the treasure. His eyes scanned the corners of the hall. Past the gold, past the weapons, past the shining things that others would kill for. His stare stopped at the darkest corner of the room, where no fire dared to burn. There, in the shadows, was a figure. At first it looked like a statue. A girl chained to the wall by iron cuffs blackened with age. Chains ran across her wrists, ankles, and neck, carved with runes that glowed faintly red. Her hair fell like silver threads covering her face. Her skin was pale, almost too pale, like she had not seen sunlight for centuries. She did not move. She did not even breathe, or so it seemed. The human's eyes narrowed. Something about her pulled him in, stronger than all the treasures in the room. The hall grew colder as he stared. The king noticed where the human's gaze had gone. His smile faded. "Not her," he said quickly, his tone sharp. "Forget that. One, she is nothing, a relic, a curse bound for eternity. You do not want her." But the human did not look away. He took a step forward, ignoring the treasure, ignoring the weapons, ignoring the shocked whispers of the court. His voice, calm but steady, cut through the silence. "I choose her." The hall exploded with gasps. The guards gripped their spears tighter. The servants fell back, muttering prayers under their breath. Even the flames in the torches seemed to flicker lower. The king's face darkened, his crown tilted slightly. As he leaned forward, "Do you know what you ask for, human?" he growled. "That girl has been chained for 200 years. 2 centuries ago, she brought destruction upon this land. She is cursed. No alien dares touch her chains. She is death itself." But the human's expression did not change. He simply pointed again, his hand steady. "Her," the king slammed, his fist against the arm of his throne. The sound echoed like thunder. "You refuse gold? Jewels? Weapons that could make you a king? You dare spit on my offer for a cursed prisoner?" The human spoke softly, but every word carried weight. "Die. Did not fight for gold. I fought to survive. And I see someone else who has been forced to survive far longer than me. I choose her." The chained girl stirred. For the first time in centuries, she raised her head. The silver hair shifted, and glowing eyes bright, otherworldly locked. On to the human, the court froze. Chill swept across the hall. Those eyes, long sealed by magic, were open again. The king's face paled. He leaned back slowly, his hands tightening on the arms of his throne. He had seen those eyes before. Long ago, they had burned kingdoms to ash. The whispers grew louder, hissing across the hall like snakes. He chose her. The curse awakens. No one has touched her chains for centuries. A human. Why him? The human stood, tall, unshaken. He did not look at the king. He did not listen to the whispers. His eyes stayed on the girl, and hers stayed on him. The king finally raised a trembling hand, silencing the crowd again. "Very well," he said slowly, though his voice trembled with hidden fear. "If you want her, then she is yours. But remember this, human. You do not free her, you doom yourself. Whatever curse she carries will be your curse now." The human said nothing. He only nodded once. The king leaned back on his throne, his face hidden in the shadows. Inside he thought of the prophecy, the one carved into the ancient stones. When chains break by hands not of our kind, the end will come. The king had hoped it was a lie. But now a human had chosen the cursed girl. The hall grew heavy with silence once again. The gold shone uselessly on the floor. The weapons lay forgotten. And in the corner the girl chained for 200 years slowly lifted her face, her eyes, glowing brighter, as if she had just seen the first spark of hope in centuries. The human had chosen her, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The great hall did not return to peace after the human's choice. Even though the king had spoken and given his word, the air inside the chamber was still heavy, tense, and filled with fear. Aliens from different clans whispered among themselves, their voices sharp but low, like the hiss of snakes. Every word carried weight, because everyone knew what the human had done was not bravery, was madness. No one in the hall looked at the treasure anymore. All eyes were on the corner where the girl sat chained, her silver hair covering most of her face. Her glowing eyes had only opened for a moment, but that was enough. That single moment was like thunder after years of silence. The courtiers, the priests, and even the guards could not forget the sight. They had grown up with tales of her curse. And now, for the first time in centuries, she had moved. One alien noble, tall and wrapped in robes of black, leaned close to another and whispered, "This is how the world ends. The prophecy is true. A death worlder was always meant to awaken her." Another spat on the ground. "No, this human is a fool, will die in her presence. She will devour his soul before sunrise." Yet another whispered, his voice trembling, Perhaps this is why humans are feared. Perhaps only they can touch what we cannot." The human heard the whispers but gave them no answer. His eyes stayed locked on the girl, calm and steady. He did not see a curse. He did not see a monster. He only saw someone abandoned, forgotten, and left to rot. His silence unsettled the court more than words ever could. The king raised his hand again, and the whispers died down for a moment, though fear still rattled in everyone's chest. His voice was low, sharp, like the strike of a blade. "You do not understand what you ask for, human. That girl is not a prize. She is a wound upon this world. For 200 years she has sat in chains, because the moment she is free, death follows." The human finally spoke, his voice calm but unshaken. "Then why is she still alive?" The words cut deep. The king froze. The courtiers shifted uneasily. It was a question no one had dared to ask. If she was truly cursed, if she was truly a danger, why had the king not ended her long ago? Why chain her, feed her enough to survive, but never release nor kill her? The king's lips tightened, but he said nothing. Instead, an old priest stepped forward. His robes dragged along the floor, and his long fingers clutched a staff carved with the same runes that glowed on the girl's chains. His voice cracked as he spoke, yet it carried across the hall. "She is the cursed daughter of the past. Her power cannot be destroyed, only contained. The runes you see keep her soul locked. For 2 centuries, we have guarded her. Our fathers did, and their fathers before them. But if her chains are broken, the curse will return to this world. Cities will burn, rivers will dry, blood will cover the sky." The human did not flinch. He stepped forward, the firelight reflecting. In his eyes, or maybe, he said softly, "You fear her not because of a curse, but because of what she truly is." Gasps echoed across the chamber. Some courtiers recoiled as though the human's words themselves were dangerous. The priest glared at him, but in his old eyes there was a flicker of doubt, quickly hidden. The chained girl's head lifted slightly again, and this time her lips parted. Her voice was weak, dry like wind across dead leaves, but it carried a strange sweetness. 200 years, she whispered. What? 200 years, and not one of you dared to speak to me. The crowd recoiled. A few priests clutched their staffs tighter. Some guards even raised their spears. The sound of her voice was like a ghost crawling through the hall. But the human smiled. He stepped closer to her, his boots echoing. On the stone floor, King slammed his fist against the throne, his anger rising again. Stop. Do not go near her, human. You do not understand the danger. The human ignored him. His steps were slow but steady, each one echoing like a challenge. To the entire court, his eyes never left the girl, and hers never left him. She looked at him as if he was the first living soul she had seen in centuries. The whispers in the court grew wild. He will die. The curse will take him. No. No, look, she is watching him differently. Why? The girl's glowing. Eyes softened, just slightly. She tilted her head, her silver hair falling aside. You are not like them, she said weakly. They look at me with fear. You look at me with pity. The human stopped just a few steps away from her. He crouched, lowering himself to her level, his voice calm. Look at you as someone who has suffered long enough. Her lips trembled, and for a moment it seemed she might cry. Eh? But then the chains rattled violently, glowing red as though they sensed her awakening. The priests screamed chants to suppress the curse, their staffs glowing. The hall shook as the runes fought to hold her down. The king rose to his feet, his voice echoing like thunder. Enough, guards. Take the human away from her. If he breaks the seal, we are all doomed. The guards moved, but none dared step too close. The human stood, facing them with cold eyes, ready for a fight if needed. His presence alone was enough to make them hesitate, and then something strange happened. The chained girl whispered one final sentence, her eyes glowing brighter than ever before. He is the one. The chains know it. That is why they fear him. The hall shook again, the runes flashing like dying stars. The whispers in the court turned to screams, and even the king stepped back, fear written on his face. The human stood. Calm, but inside, his heart beat faster. For the first time he understood, this was no accident. He had been brought here for a reason, and the girl chained for 200 years had just chosen him. The palace slept under a blood-red moon, but the human did not. His chamber was filled with silence, yet his thoughts were loud. The whispers of the court still echoed in his mind words about curses, prophecies, and death. But louder than all of them was the sound of her voice, soft and fragile, yet alive. You are not like them. You look at me with pity. He lay on the cold bed they had given him, staring at the ceiling. The king had warned him to stay away from the girl, but warnings meant nothing to him. He had fought beasts with claws sharper than blades, crossed deserts where even air was poison, and faced warriors who called themselves gods. Fear did not control him. Curiosity and something deeper, a pull he could not explain, drove him forward. When the palace finally quieted and the guards grew lazy at their posts, the human rose. His boots made no sound as he moved through the dark halls, following the path he had memorized earlier. The way led down into the older parts of the palace, where the stones were cracked and the air was damp. The deeper he went, the colder it became, as if he was walking into the mouth of something ancient at last. He reached the chamber. The torches burned low, casting long shadows across the walls. The runes on the girl's chains pulsed faintly. Like a heartbeat read against the dark stone, she sat slumped against the wall, eyes closed, her body weak but still alive. Yet the moment he stepped inside, her eyes opened. You came, she whispered. He nodded, stepping closer. I said, I chose you. I don't change my mind. Her lips trembled. You don't understand. These chains? They are not iron. They are made from words of power, sealed by fear and hatred. No alien hand could ever break them. The human knelt beside her. His eyes studied the runes, his fingers brushing against the cold metal. The chains burned faintly against his skin, as if testing him, but he did not pull back. Instead, he pressed harder. The girl gasped. "Stop. They will tear you apart." But the human only smiled faintly. "I have felt worse." He tightened his grip on the chains. They grew hot, glowing brighter, but still, he did not let go. The runes began to crack, small lines spreading like veins of light. The chamber shook as though the stones themselves resisted his strength. The girl stared at him, disbelief flooding, her eyes impossible. For 200 years, no one has even made them tremble. Sweat dripped down his face, but his voice stayed calm. Maybe they were waiting for someone stubborn enough. The runes screamed, sparks flying. The red glow turned white, blinding in its brightness. With a roar, the chain on her right wrist shattered, falling to the ground in broken pieces. The sound echoed like thunder, shaking dust from the ceiling. The girl's body jerked, her freed arm trembling as if blood was rushing into it for the first time in centuries. She gasped in pain, but tears filled her eyes, not of suffering, but of hope. You really broke it," she whispered. The human stood, moving to the next chain. Again he gripped the glowing metal, again the runes fought, burning his hands trying to push him away. But he held firm, his jaw set. Slowly, the second chain cracked, then burst apart with a sound like shattering glass. The palace above stirred. Distant shouts echoed through the halls. Guards had felt the tremor. The priests would come. The human did not stop, chain by chain. He tore them away, her ankles first, then the one at her neck. Each time, the ground shook harder, and the air grew heavier. A strange energy filled the chamber, wild and ancient. The girl's strength slowly returned with every broken link. Her eyes glowed brighter, her breath steadier. Finally, only one chain remained the heaviest, wrapped around her chest, carved with the oldest runes. The girl looked at him with fear. "This one holds more than my body. It holds my soul. If you break it, I don't know what I will become." The human met her eyes without hesitation. "Then we'll find out together," he gripped. The chain, this time, it fought harder than ever before. The runes screamed, burning his skin, tearing at his strength. The air grew so hot it felt like fire, then so cold it cut like ice. His knees bent under the force, but he did not let go. The girl cried out, "Stop, you'll kill yourself." "Act!" The human shouted back, voice shaking the chamber. "Better to die freeing you than live watching you suffer." With a final surge of will, the chain cracked, then shattered into pieces that dissolved into ash. Silence fell. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The chamber was still, as if holding its breath. Then the girl collapsed forward, free for the first time in 200 years. The human caught her before she hit the ground. Her body was light, fragile, but there was power hidden beneath her weakness. She trembled in his arms, tears streaming down her pale face. "You did it. You really did it." He gave a tired smile, his hands burned but steady. "Told you I don't change my mind." Above, the palace erupted with chaos. Alarms rang. The priests screamed in terror, chanting to suppress what they feared had already awakened. Guards rushed down the halls, their boots pounding against the stone. The king himself rose from his throne, his heart filled with dread. The prophecy had spoken. When chains break by hands not of our kind, the end will come, and now the chains were gone. But in the darkness of that chamber, the human stood tall. Holding the girl close, he had not freed a monster, he had freed a soul. And for the first time in centuries, the girl whispered words no one had heard from her lips. "Thank you." The sound of her gratitude was softer than a whisper, yet stronger than any curse. It echoed in his heart, and soon it would echo across the galaxy. The chains lay shattered on the cold stone floor, glowing faintly before turning to dust. For 200 years, those runes had bound the girl, keeping her trapped in silence and pain. Now she was free. The human still held her in his arms. Her body trembled like a newborn creature learning to breathe for the first time. Her pale skin glistened with sweat. Her silver hair clung to her face, and her glowing eyes struggled to focus. She looked fragile, yet something powerful pulsed beneath her weakness, like a storm waiting behind thin glass. Above them, the palace roared with noise. Bells rang, priests shouted, guards clashed with each other in panic. They had felt the tremors, the breaking of the runes. They knew what it meant. The curse was no longer sealed. The human gently set the girl against the wall, crouching to meet her eyes. His voice was low, calm, steady. "You're free now." "Aye!" Her lips quivered. She touched her wrist, where the chain had been, staring at the unmarked skin in disbelief. Tears welled in her eyes, spilling down her cheeks. No one has touched me without fear for 2 centuries. No one dared. And yet you gave a faint smile. "I told you, I don't change my mind." She shook her head weakly. "You don't understand what you've done. By breaking the seal, you've tied yourself to me. My curse, my soul. Part of it clings to you now. You should feel pain, burning, something that kills you slowly. But you're still standing." Human raised his scarred hands, burned where he had gripped the chains. "Hurts," he admitted, "but not enough to stop me." Her eyes widened. She had expected him to collapse, to scream, to fall like every alien who had tried before. But he stood there, calm and steady. The thought stirred something inside her, something she hadn't felt in centuries. Hope. The ground rumbled. Chamber door burst open, and a squad of alien guards rushed in with spears glowing blue. Behind them, priests chanted, their voices rising to the ceiling. The king himself entered, his black crown heavy on his brow, his face twisted with fear. In fury, "What have you done, human?" The king roared, "You've broken the seal. You understand what this means? You've doomed us all." The guards raised their weapons, pointing them at the human and the girl. The priests' chants grew louder, the runes on their staffs. Glowing, the king pointed his finger like a blade. "Kill him. Kill them both before the curse consumes us." The human stood, shielding the girl with his body. His voice cut through the chaos. "You call her a curse? But what I see is someone you chained because you feared her." The priests screamed louder, and the guards lunged forward. But then something happened. The girl gasped, clutching her chest as light burst from within her. Her silver hair lifted, as though touched by unseen wind. Her glowing eyes flared brighter, filling the chamber with radiant light. The priests stumbled, their chants breaking. The guards froze, unable to move. Even the king stepped back, covering his eyes. The human turned to her, his hand resting on her shoulder. "Easy," he whispered. "You're still weak." Her voice trembled, but it carried across the chamber like a song. I don't want to destroy. I never wanted to. They feared my gift. They called it a curse. But with you." Her eyes locked onto the human, and her light softened. "With you, it feels different. It feels alive." The human nodded. "And use it to live, not to destroy."
The light dimmed slightly.
Controlled now, no longer wild. The priests stared in, shock, whispering in panic. "Impossible. She controls it." For 2 centuries, she could not stop the destruction. How? How can she now? The king's face twisted with rage. He pointed at the human. "It's him. It's somehow the human binds her power. Without him, she cannot control it. Kill him, and the curse will return." The guards moved forward again. But the girl rose unsteadily to her feet, standing beside the human. Though her body was weak, her voice rang with defiance. "No, for 2 centuries you chained me, starved me, and silenced me. But this human, he gave me freedom, saw me as more than a monster. If you try to hurt him, you will face me." The light around her flared again, shaking the chamber walls. The guards froze in terror, not daring to strike. The king gritted his teeth, but inside he felt fear like never before. "Thought," the prophecy echoed. In his mind, when chains break by hands not of our kind, the end will come. But this did not look like the end. This looked like something worse change. The human stepped forward, still shielding the girl. His voice was calm, but strong. You've kept her in chains for 200 years. You called her a curse when she was just a person. That ends tonight. The king's face burned with hatred. You don't know what you've done, human. You think you saved her, but you've doomed yourself. Her bond is tied to you now. Her power will burn you alive. The human smirked faintly. Then I'll burn with her. The girl gasped, staring at him in disbelief. No one, not her family, not her people, not even her lovers from long ago, had ever said such words. She felt her heart tremble in her chest, beating for the first time like it belonged to someone else too. The king, furious and shaken, turned and stormed out of the chamber. The priests followed, their chants breaking into fearful whispers. The guards lowered their spears, unwilling to fight what they could not understand, and so the chamber fell into silence again. The girl leaned against the human, her body weak, but her spirit burning brighter than ever. She whispered softly, "So, only he could hear you. You gave me back more than freedom. You gave me myself." He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "And let's make sure no one chains you again." Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "With you, maybe I can finally live." The palace above trembled as the news spread. The cursed girl was awake. She was no longer chained. But what no one realized was this: her awakening was not the end. It was only the beginning. The night after the girl's awakening, the palace did not sleep. The corridors echoed with shouts, the priests prayed louder than ever, and the king sat on his throne, his face carved with rage. His empire trembled with fear. Everyone had seen it. The cursed girl standing, light bursting from her body. No longer bound by chains, the king's council begged him to destroy her. The priests warned that the prophecy was now unfolding. But the king, proud and cunning, knew he could not. Simply kill the girl. Her power was too great, and now the human stood beside her. If he struck, he might lose everything. So the king chose a different path. He called it a trial. At sunrise, the human and the girl were dragged into the grand arena of the palace. Thousands of aliens filled the seats, their voices low with fear and curiosity. The sky was dark, clouds swirling as if nature itself was watching. In the center of the arena, the king stood tall, his crown heavy on his brow. His words echoing through the vast space. "You claim she is no curse," the king said, pointing. "At the human, you claim she can live free, that her power is not destruction. Then prove it. Survive this night, and she is yours to keep. Fail, and both of you will be ashes by dawn." The crowd gasped. Trial had begun. The human's jaw tightened, but he did not argue. He simply turned to the girl, his hand steady on her shoulder. "Stay close. We'll make it through." Gates of the arena opened with a groan, and the first wave of enemies marched in. Alien warriors clad in steel, their eyes burning with hatred. They carried blades dipped in poison, weapons forged to kill even the strongest beasts. The crowd held its breath as the warriors charged. The human moved like a predator, with no shield. No armor, only his fists, and whatever he could grab from the ground he fought. His body twisted, dodged, struck. He grabbed a fallen spear, using it like an extension of himself. One by one the warriors fell, their bodies hitting the sand. The girl, still weak, tried to help. Sparks of light flickered from her hands, but her power was unstable. Every time she used it, the chain's memory pulled at her, threatening to drag her back into silence. She cried out in frustration. The human saw her trembling and placed himself between her and the enemy. "Don't force it. Use what you can. I'll handle the rest." His voice was steady, come even in the middle of chaos. His trust gave her strength. The second wave came, beasts from the deep caves. Creatures with claws like swords and teeth dripping acid. They roared, shaking the arena walls. The crowd screamed, priests chanted, and the king leaned forward. Eager to see blood, the human stood tall, sweat dripping, blood on his arms, but his eyes sharp. He moved fast, striking the beasts where their armor was weak. His body was small, compared to theirs, but his speed, his will, his refusal to fall, these made him unstoppable. The girl raised her trembling hands again, this time focusing on one single spark. A burst of light shot forward, blinding one of the beasts long enough for the human to drive a spear through its throat. She gasped, her body shaking, but she smiled faintly. For the first time in centuries, she was not destroying, she was helping. The king scowled. Not enough, he hissed. He raised his hand, and the gates opened again. From the shadows emerged assassins cloaked in black, their blades dipped in fire. They moved like smoke, fast and silent, surrounding the human and the girl. The human spun, fighting them off, his body bleeding from cuts, but he never stepped away from the girl. She was always behind him, always shielded by his frame. The assassins struck again and again, their numbers endless. The human staggered, his breathing heavy, his vision blurring. The crowd gasped, believing the end was near, and then her voice rang out. Enough. The girl's power exploded from her body, not wild, not chaotic, but focused. A dome of light surrounded them, burning the assassin's blades, throwing them back. Her hair lifted like silver fire, her eyes blazing. She stood on her own, her voice steady for the first time. They chained me for 200 years. They called me curse. But this human, he gave me strength, and I will not let you take him from me. The assassins hesitated, fear breaking through their training. The human smiled faintly, leaning against her dome of light. Told you. You just needed to believe. Together they moved. The human struck with raw strength. The girl supported with bursts of controlled light. The arena filled with smoke, screams, and fire. But when the dust cleared, only two figures remained standing. The human battered and bleeding, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. The girl, glowing faintly, standing beside him, no longer weak, no longer silent. The crowd erupted into chaos. Some screamed in terror, others in awe. Priests collapsed, whispering that the prophecy had changed. The king's face twisted with rage, his fist shaking on the throne. The human looked up at him, his voice cutting through the storm. You wanted proof? Here it is. She is not a curse. She is not your prisoner. She is free. The girl placed her hand on his shoulder, her glowing eyes locking on the king. Her voice carried like thunder. And anyone who dares to chain me again will face us both. The arena fell into silence. Even the clouds above seemed to pause. The king sat frozen, unable to speak. He had planned for the human to die, for the girl's curse to destroy him. But instead, together, they had survived the trial of fire. And in surviving, they had become something more, something even he could not control. The arena still smelled of smoke and blood. The sand was dark with the bodies of warriors, beasts, and assassins. Yet in the middle of the battlefield, only two figures stood, the human and the girl who had been chained for 200 years. The crowd remained silent. Thousands of eyes watched them, but no one spoke. Fear, awe, and confusion spread like fire. They had expected death. They had expected chaos. But instead, they had seen something far more terrifying. A human and a so-called cursed girl fighting, side by side and winning. The king sat frozen on his throne, his knuckles white as he gripped the armrests. His crown weighed heavy, not from gold, but from dread.
For the first time in his long reign, he felt powerless.
The human, bruised and bleeding, placed a steady hand on the girl's shoulder. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but his eyes remained sharp. He looked not at the treasure, not at the crowd, but at her. You held back the curse, he said softly, his voice rough with exhaustion. You controlled it. The girl, glowing faintly in the aftermath of her power, shook her head. Her silver hair flowed like water in the strange light. No, I did not control it. You did. When you stood in front of me, when you refused to let them take me, it was your strength that shaped my power. Without you, I would have drowned in it again. He gave a tired smile. Then we'll keep standing together." Her glowing eyes softened, and she felt something stir inside her chest. It was not the curse, it was not fear. It was something older, something she had long forgotten, trust. The silence of the arena broke as priests rushed forward, their staffs glowing, their voices trembling with chants. They cried out warnings to the king. Do not let them leave. The prophecy binds them. The human has become her anchor. If she stays free, your throne will fall. The king rose, his voice thunderous. Stop them. Take the girl back. Kill the human if you must. Guards hesitated. Some raised their weapons, but their hands shook. They had seen the human's fury, the girl's light. None of them wished to test it again. Still, fear of the king pushed them forward. The human tightened his stance, ready to fight, though his body screamed with pain. Girl stepped forward. Her voice rang clear, echoing across the entire arena. No more chains. Light erupted from her body, not wild, not destructive, but calm like dawn breaking after a long night. The guards froze, their weapons falling from their hands. The priest's chants faltered, their runes burning out. Even the king stumbled back, his eyes wide with disbelief. The girl's voice softened, but it carried more power than any weapon. For centuries you called me curse. You feared what you did not understand. But this human saw me, not as a monster, not as a prophecy. He saw me as a person. Because of that, I am free. The human stepped beside her, their shoulders touching. His voice, low but strong, added to hers. And I will fight anyone who tries to chain her again. The crowd erupted in whispers. Aliens who had once cursed her name now stared with doubt in their eyes. Some even looked at her with something close to respect. Shift had begun. The king, shaking with rage, pointed at them. Do you fools not see? Together, they are dangerous. The human binds her power. If he lives, she will destroy us all. The girl turned her glowing eyes on him, her gaze sharp. No, king. You fear us not because of what we will destroy, but because of what we will change. You ruled through fear. But fear breaks when truth shines. Her words struck deeper than any blade. The crowd murmured louder, doubt growing against the king. His authority trembled before their eyes. The king clenched his teeth, his voice shaking. You are bound to him now. You cannot exist without him. That is no freedom. That is another chain. The girl looked at the human, then back at the king. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. No, this is not a chain. This is a bond, one beyond fear. She turned to the human, placing her hand gently against his burned palm. You broke my prison. You faced my curse. And still, you did not run. For 200 years I waited in darkness. But you became my light. The human said nothing. He only closed his hand around hers, firm and steady. It was a gesture stronger than any vow. The king saw it, and for the first time, true fear filled his eyes. Not fear of the curse, not fear of prophecy, but fear of losing power. The bond between human and girl was something he could not control, could not chain, could not kill without bringing ruin on himself. The priests wailed, calling it blasphemy. But the people, the crowd, saw something else. They saw hope where there had only been fear. One by one, they bowed their heads, not to the king, but to the human and the girl. The king shouted, No, you will not bow to them. I am your ruler. I am your king. But his voice was drowned by the sound of thousands kneeling in the arena, their voices rising in a chant. It was not her name, nor his. It was one word, simple and powerful: freedom. The king's crown seemed heavier than ever. He stumbled back to his throne, his body trembling. He had lost the people. He had lost their fear. The human and the girl stood side by side, bound not by chains, but by something far greater. Together, they looked at the rising sun breaking through the storm clouds above. It was not the end of the curse. It was not the end of the fight. But it was the beginning of something new, something even the king could not stop. And in that moment, the galaxy learned a truth it had long forgotten. Bonds forged by trust were stronger than any chain, stronger than any curse, stronger even than fear itself. The first rays of morning stretched over the alien city, cutting through the storm clouds that had gathered during the night of the trial. The golden light spilled into the grand arena, painting the battlefield where hundreds had fallen, where a human and a once cursed girl had stood against an empire. Now the arena was silent. The crowd had not dispersed. They remained in their seats, watching, waiting, whispering. The king still sat on his throne, but his crown seemed smaller, his voice lost. His people no longer looked at him with fear. Their eyes were fixed on two figures standing together in the center of the arena, the human, battered and bloodied, but still unbroken. The girl, glowing faintly, her silver hair flowing in the dawn light, her chains gone forever. She stood taller than before, no longer slumped by the weight of runes or fear. Her body was weak, but her spirit burned brighter than any star. The king finally rose, his voice shaking, but loud enough to echo. Human, this is your last chance. Take gold, take jewels, take armies if you wish, but leave her. To this throne, without her, you have nothing. The human looked up at him, his expression calm, his voice steady. You're wrong. She doesn't belong to you. She doesn't belong to anyone. She belongs to herself. The crowd gasped. The king's face turned red with rage, shouted, his voice cracking. I am king. I am the law. Without chains, she will bring death. The girl stepped forward, her eyes glowing, her voice strong. No, without chains, I will bring life. You called me cursed because you feared what you could not control. But I am not yours to name. I am free, and I choose him. Her hand reached. For the humans, her fingers weaving into his, the crowd erupted not in fear, but in cheers. Thousands of voices rose together, chanting the word that had begun in whispers during the trial. Freedom, freedom, freedom. The king staggered back, as the chant grew louder, shaking the very stones of the arena. His priests tried to shout against it, but their voices were drowned. His guards looked at each other, uncertain, no longer raising their spears. The human's eyes stayed on the king. Your power is finished. You ruled through fear. But fear dies when people see the truth. The king's face twisted with desperation. He raised his hand, summoning the last of his magic. Black fire surged around him, the cursed energy of his throne. With a scream of fury, he hurled it at them. The girl moved instantly, her body glowing, her power surging forward. But this time, it was not wild, not destructive. Her light met his darkness, and where they clashed, the arena blazed with brilliance. The crowd shielded their eyes as the two forces battled. The human stood firm beside her, gripping her hand tighter. He gave her his strength, his will, his unshakable resolve. And her light grew brighter, stronger, until it consumed the king's. Flamed with a final cry, the king was thrown back onto his throne. His crown cracked, his power shattered. His voice broke into silence. The arena fell quiet. Smoke drifted in the dawn light. The people stared at their king, broken and powerless. And then they looked at the human and the girl standing, hand in hand, stronger than chains, stronger than fear. The girl's voice rang out, soft but powerful. This is not the end of a curse. This is the beginning of a new dawn. The people erupted again, cheering louder than ever. Some wept, some bowed, some raised their fists in joy. The word freedom thundered across the city, carried beyond the arena walls. Echoing into the streets, the human looked at the girl, his tired smile soft. You said I tied myself to your curse. Looks like we turned it into something else. Glowing eyes softened as she looked back at him. It turned it into hope. She leaned closer, her forehead resting lightly against his, her voice barely more than a whisper. For 200 years I waited for someone who would see me as more than chains. And you came. He squeezed her hand. And I'm not letting go. The people watched, their hearts struck by the bond between them. It was not treasure, not power, not conquest. It was something deeper, something every creature across the stars longed for. Connection. The king was dragged away by his own guards, no longer a ruler, but a fallen tyrant. His throne sat empty, and the people no longer cared who sat on it. They had already chosen who they would follow, not as rulers, but as symbols. The human and the girl walked from the arena side by side, their steps slow but unshaken. Everywhere they passed, aliens bowed, not from fear, but from respect. Above them, the sun rose higher, its light spilling across the city, washing away the shadows. For the first time in centuries, the girl felt warmth on her face. She closed her eyes, letting it touch her skin, letting it remind her she was alive. And for the first time in his life, the human realized he had found something worth more than any treasure, more than any throne. They did not know what lay ahead. Battles would come. Enemies would rise. The galaxy would not easily forget its fears, but together, they had already proven something no prophecy could deny. Chains can break, curses can end. And even in the darkest corners of the universe, a new dawn can rise.